My friend and colleague Nigel Farage can do anything. He can deliver Brexit. He can spearhead the broadcasting revolution that is GB News. He can expose the scandal of the debanking that's happening within our financial services and see the resignation of the NatWest chief executive. He can be mocked by the European Parliament and have the last laugh as we exit the bloc. He can prevail in the jungle and win an army of new fans. But right now, Nigel risks tainting his remarkable legacy with something that surely even he doesn't want to see. 5 years of a Labour government and Sir Keir Starmer living in number 10. Is handing the keys to power to the most woke political party in the country and a leader who campaigned for Jeremy Corbyn to be PM really a price worth paying to give the Tories a bloody nose? I don't think so. You won't feel it this January as the cold wind blows and as the rain pours down and as the post-Christmas credit card bills start to come in. But the country is finally getting back on its feet. Inflation is falling faster than Prince Andrew's trousers at a Taylor Swift concert. And while Germany and the Eurozone has languished in recession, Britain has grown. Unemployment remains low. The debt is coming down. Investment is up. Tata, Nissan, Toyota, Siemens, they all want to put money into Britain. With ongoing investment in green renewables, which have their place, and a sensible plan to drill for the oil and gas on our own shores so that we don't become customers of Vladimir Putin, it means that energy security is on the cards for the first time in a generation. Starmer's answer to all of this? No new oil and gas licences. Betting the house on green energy with a 1970s-style state-owned government enterprise because the private sector won't touch it with a barge pole. Remember those auctions for new wind farm licences? No takers. Now, the Tories have had a dreadful 5 years, I will give you that. But if Keir Starmer had been Prime Minister during that time, we would have had more lockdowns, for example. He called Freedom Day on July the 19th, 2021 as reckless. He relentlessly called for more measures, which have since proven to be as highly damaging as they were ineffective, all so that he could do those ridiculous press conferences where he pounced around pretending to be Prime Minister and wanted to look statesmanlike. And my pal, Nigel Farage, risks putting him in charge. Now, Nigel doesn't get much wrong, and he's a fabulous guy. But on this one, I got to part company with him. No one really loves Labour or has much enthusiasm for the cause, and I've never met a Keir Starmer fan. In my view, he's not so much a politician as a human manifestation of ChatGPT software gone wrong. But the entire Reform UK project, with admirable aims, goals and policies, risks sweeping him to an historic landslide. Can you imagine what Keir Starmer would do with a 150-seat majority? Do you think we'll have less strikes, even though the Labour Party is bankrolled by the unions? Do you think Britain will cut spending when Starmer is in hock to the public sector, who will expect pay rises galore and unprecedented investment? Do you think Labour will stop the boats when it's not even on Starmer's list of 5 missions? Do you think Labour will cut taxes to boost the economy? Elton John's natural hair will grow back before that happens. Do you think Labour will tackle the insidious cancer of extreme political correctness and wokery in our public institutions and corporations? Good luck with that, when Starmer jumps on every woke cause and can't even define what a woman is. The Tories are dreadful, a toxic brand, and deservedly so. But in our increasingly presidential system, Sunak is demonstrably the better CEO for the country than Starmer will ever be. And you've got to understand, it is a choice of Sunak versus Starmer. Which of those two is the lesser of two evils? Let's talk about Starmer, a former lawyer whose job it was in the past to take on any case, whether he believed in it or not, something that I think he's now doing in politics. I made the mistake of watching his first speech of the year this week, and let me just say it's lucky I wasn't operating heavy machinery at the time. And in terms of policy, it was thinner than Posh Spice on the keto diet. So Nigel Farage has an admirable legacy. He is a remarkable guy. But I think he risks damaging all of that and the country by saddling Britain with 5 years of Labour and 5 years of Starmer in number 10, which in my view is a step too Farage. Your reaction, mark at gbnews.com. I'll get to your emails shortly. I know there's a lot of support out there for Reform UK, so let me know your thoughts. But first, my top pundits: former Brexit Party MEP Annunziata Rees-Mogg, ex-Conservative MP and farmer Neil Parish, and comedian and broadcaster Sajila Kershi. Neil, you're the best person to ask. Former Conservative MP. Reform UK are going to keep you guys out of power for at least the next 5 years.
Very likely, because I think what will happen in this general election coming is the right-wing vote is going to be split. What happened in the 2019 election, you had the left-wing vote split. Brexit was going to be delivered by Boris Johnson, and a clear majority went to the Conservatives. This time, it's very muddy, and people are upset with the Conservative Party, so that there's a lot of Tory voters that may vote Reform. Now, what will happen come closer to the general election is precisely the argument you've been making, Mark, is do people actually see a vote for Reform? Is that a vote to let Labour in? So some of that Tory vote won't shift to Reform that you think they would today, but it is a real danger this time. And I think, a huge majority to Labour would be a mistake for this country. I think a huge majority for anybody is always a mistake because they forget what they're put there for. So, economically, this country is turning round. But the trouble is the Tory party has behaved so badly over the last 5 years that it's very difficult to persuade people on the doorstep that voting Tory again is the right way forward. But I think it'll get a lot more interesting come the general election. And I think, the Keir Starmer will have to come out with some absolute clear policies, not just anti-Tory propaganda. Very popular at the moment, but come the general election, they've got to work out what government they want and who do they want. And I think Nigel Farage does need to sort of think about it because I don't think he necessarily wants to hand it over to Keir Starmer. I think, Mark, you're a bit unkind on Sir Keir Starmer. I think he's a nice enough guy, but do I think he'd make a good Prime Minister? No, I don't. And I think Rishi Sunak is the better. But there's a lot of water to throw under the bridge, and we don't want Reform taking away Tory votes.
Well, of course, Annunziata, the polls speak for themselves. Labour are streets ahead. Labour could easily argue that the Tories have made a complete mess of government over the last 14 years. They've trashed the economy, and it's clear Britain wants a change, that Britain needs a change. But I just wonder whether Nigel's amazing talents as a politician and broadcaster and as an influencer are going to have the worst possible outcome, which is a Labour government.
I agree with you. In 2019, we forget quite quickly that we were not guaranteed that Boris Johnson would win a majority at all, and if he did, what level of majority it would be. But the Brexit Party did insist on standing candidates against Conservatives in leave voting red wall seats. And it did cost the Conservatives a number of them, despite the fact that across the country, Boris Johnson, in order to get Brexit done, won a huge majority. If you just look at Wentworth and Dearne, which is bits of Rotherham and Barnsley, the Conservative vote grew, Labour collapsed by 24%. The difference became 2,200, and the Brexit Party took 7,000. Well, that would have been another Conservative seat. If that is replicated in a very close election, it will hand the keys of number 10 to Keir Starmer, to the Labour Party, who I have no idea what they stand for. I don't have a very clear idea on what the Reform Party stand for, except for they're not the Tories and they're not Labour. There's a lot of good messages in there. But when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of policy, they don't have the background, the experience to have formulated them. And I'm worried that there is a naivety there about the realpolitik of what effect them standing against Conservatives is going to have.
Well, I'm very fond of the setup at Reform UK. Of course, Nigel is a friend and highly respected colleague. He's a great guy.
Best boss I've ever had.
Well, there you go. And Richard Tice is a brilliant chap as well. And we've had so many great on-air little ding-dongs. I'm a huge fan. But listen, you're probably a huge fan as well because you'd like to see a Labour government, Sir Gila. So you say to Nigel, bring it on.
Yeah, well, no, I would like I don't know actually what I want because let's face it, this country's politicians across the board, you know, we're in a dire place with politics. I'm sure my friends here will agree with me. And so I don't know, it's pot luck. It's literally pot luck. So he might as well just throw his hat in, you know, and try. And then him and Richard can fight it out for the leadership for, you know, why don't we have some more infighting? I don't know. It's anyone's game. And I think we need change, but I'm not sure. Yes, and I am a Labour supporter, have been a lifelong supporter, but I do feel quite politically homeless. I don't know what Starmer's about. Yes, I agree. He does seem like a nice... you know, there shouldn't be a punishment for being a nice guy, but maybe he's too nice. I just need him to have a bit more kahunas coming up. You know, he needs to get them to drop now so that we're in time for the, you know, to get all the stuff that we need to get from him.
OK, well, listen, many would argue that Keir Starmer is playing a blinder because he's ahead in the polls and he's probably going to be our next Prime Minister. So good luck to him. Listen, may the best man win. What do you think? Mark at gbnews.com.